Any questions? As you think about depression, anxiety, anything. Go.
What is your perspective on, like, I'm sorry, it's like I'm gonna shoot a question right at you there.
Yeah, that's fine.
To what point would medication be necessary? Or, I was 10 minutes late, sorry, I don't know if we talked about that.
No, we didn't. No, absolutely. So at what point does medication have to come into play, right? And it's a controversial thing among
Right.
people,
Yeah,
right?
I know there's no right or wrong, but that's
Yeah,
based
yeah,
on your opinion.
yeah. My opinion is medication has its place, number one. Let me, and then of course I want Joseph to comment on this. This is a big topic, okay.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. This is a good question. Let me answer it this way. I know there are some who are Christians, who have strong Christian conviction, and they look at medication when it comes to mental health as being not the way to go. Right? We need to trust God. We need to read the Word. We need to pray. Don't go to that secular psychiatrist. He's just going to give you a prescription, and that's not the answer. There are some people who have that conviction. I've talked to people that way for a number of years. I had a gentleman in my office probably 15, 20 years ago now, and that was his conviction. And here's what I said to him. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you ever get a headache? He said, actually, yeah, sometimes I get migraines. I said, how do you handle that? He said, oh, my doctor gave me this prescription. I said, why don't you pray more? Don't take your migraine medicine. Pray. Say a verse. And he looked at me, he said, Pastor Ron, and he caught it. Now I'm just deducing it down to that example. Why? Because I think medicine has its place. Yes, there is the abuse of medication. You can look at the pharmaceutical worlds that have been sued because of just constantly giving out these psychotropic meds and stuff like that. It does have its place. When does it have its place? I believe meds come into play when we need a stopgap. We need a life preserve. This person is thinking irrationally. There's suicidal thoughts. Yes, they're in counseling. Yes, they're trying to work through cognitive behavior therapy, whatever they're doing, but those thoughts are still looming. They are still checking out, right? And then a medication will actually clear their head so they can hear the counsel. So I think medication does have its place. It does mean that once you enter into the world of psychotropic meds, and Joseph can speak more on this, you kind of enter into a world of, okay, now is this the med or is this him? Is he feeling worse because of the med? I gotta wait for it to get leveled off. Now what side effects is the med gonna have? Now we're treating those and we're trying to treat, I get it. And so people say, I want to stay away from it. But I think it does have its place. Joseph.
Oh, that's really good. Thanks for the question. Pretty much, I think a good start is in your own life right now. Think of your worldview as far as even being Christian first, and then we get to the medication piece. A lot of times, even with counseling, we were raised with like a biblical counseling way of looking at life, that everything wrong is sin, or thing lacking, like prayer, like Pastor Ron said, or needing more time with the Word. That's a biblical world. And none of these are wrong, it's just how it is. These are how we view life. We have biblical, and then we have the secular, right? A lot of people in the world will just only want to study psychology books and the mind and not take the spiritual component, or as you hear a lot, the biopsychosocial spiritual component, biological, social, spiritual, psychological responses. So the secular, and then there's the merge, which I studied, which was Christian worldview with still having data and science and just understanding the mind, and it was the merge. And yeah, kind of what Pastor Ron said, I agree, is there is a place for that, and if you don't know the answer to that, I would say definitely each child is different. Some of them may not know, and so you go to a physician, a family doctor, or a Christian psychiatrist, or you could go to a psychiatrist that is not faith-based, but still, got a license, a medical doctorate degree. And I believe, there's sometimes you need talk therapy in conjunction with the medication, like a mood stabilizer. I know that a lot of severe mental health disorders, whether it's like schizophrenia, bipolar, you'll find that it's almost basically a prerequisite for the betterment of their, progress of life. And so again, looking at those tiers will help you. Like, oh, they're not focused, let's give them some medication. Well, like, maybe they think that, and maybe someone else in their circles do it, or they hear it, but is that a tier 3 though? Let someone make the determination for that. So.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Just dovetail off of that real quick. I was working with a guy dealing with depression. He was on antidepressants, which, by the way, I just listened to a study this week that they said they're finding out that what works as good or better than antidepressants is a regimented workout. Right? The science, right? But he came in depressed. He's on an antidepressant. We start talking. Bottom line, his depression was coming from him trying to find his value in what other people thought. He was totally obsessed with what other people thought. So if he thought someone didn't think highly of him, it threw him into this depression. Okay, I'm not a licensed counselor. I give pastoral counseling. So he was a believer, and we dealt with his issue from a biblical perspective, right? How does God view you? Right? And it was 4, 5, 6 weeks talking, and he began to realize, man, I can't believe I'm actually raising these people and putting them on the level of God. I said, yes, you're getting it, right? Never forget, one day he came in and he said, Pastor Ron, I really think I can get off of these meds. I said, whoa, don't stop taking your meds. I said, I'm not a doctor. He said, no, but I really see I've kind of created this depression in my life because of my wrong thinking. I said, here's what you need to do. Call your doctor, give him my card, and let he and I talk. And I did. And I consulted his psychiatrist. The psychiatrist said, well, when I check in with him, he's definitely doing better. I thought it was a medicine. I didn't realize the things that you were saying to him. It seems to be working. On this end, if he wants to wean off, I'll wean him off. I said, well, I'm not giving you I'm not a doctor. But there was clearly a case where because of his wrong thinking, it breeded the anxiety and depression in his life, and then when he got thinking the right way, but what did the medicine do? It enabled him to even sit in there and listen to what I was saying. Right? So, good question. Anybody else? Don't be shy. Ask the hard questions. That was a good one. We'll give the hard ones a goes.
Yeah. No parenting questions for me.
Yeah, please.
For the teens that you guys interact with, do you think a lot of them are self-aware enough to know that like the amount of technology that their generation has been put on them or that they're taking part in, that it is affecting their outlook or their mental health? Or do you think they're not going to understand that until later on in life and they look back on it? But do you feel that some of them are already aware that, yeah, I know I'm doing this because it's what we all do, but I know I'm paying a price for it? Or do they ever come to you and say, hey, I need help
Yeah,
with this?
some actually do. Some actually do. I think it's a small minority though. I mean, we talk about it here a lot. It'll come out in chapel messages, right? But I think it's more like wah, 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 wah. But there are teens who actually realize, and it's funny how they realize that. And there's only a few that I can, like, if I had to name them, right? Count on one hand. Who actually, here's how they found out. Something happened, like this summer they went camping. And for whatever reason, they left their phone home. And they said they actually went through a withdrawal. But they felt so much better without having to check it every 2 seconds. So it's almost like the ones that came to that realization, something happened where they didn't have access. And they saw how it affected them. And they were at least able to realize, this is not healthy. This is not healthy. So, but I don't think the average teen realizes, like what he was talking about, the long-term effect of this constant. And it's something that I personally constantly try to exhort them without shoving it down their throat, like, guys, this is going to have effects. So that's a good question. Yeah. How many times have you left your phone home and panicked? Anybody? Be honest. Have any of you left your phone and you get to the job and you're like, all right, oh my goodness, wait, I'll be right back. And you look in the car. Well, And we're mature adults. How much more a teen,
Yeah.
right? And then that's that cognitive where they don't understand. So anyway, good question. Another question?
I just have more of a comment
Yeah,
about,
absolutely.
as much as, we have a lot of restrictions around our kids and their phones, especially at nighttime, like
Yeah.
shutting it off.
Yeah.
Nothing good happens after midnight on a cell phone.
Or after
So-
8.
Yeah, should probably adjust. But one of, we've also used it as a tool. So Men's Health Magazine had this article about, teen boys and, meme culture, which I don't get. But I know I don't get it. But this mom was saying she would, in addition to, like you were saying, build the bridge to your daughter's heart. So she was saying, like, she would use memes and she would find them and text them to her son. Something like, one was, when I say I'm tired, I really mean I don't know what to say. But a teen will, often say, I'm fine, or I'm just tired, but you know that there's something else going
Yeah,
on.
yes.
So like sending those as an opening conversation starter, or 3 different emoji faces and kind of say like, where do you think you're at right now? And then just kind of to utilize the tool if they're stuck with their phone, and that's an easier form of communication. Like it's a step.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
in person, when they're ready, and when you are ready, and when it's available, and all those things. But it can also be a tool to remain connected.
Yeah, that's a great comment, because a lot of times if that's their language, right, to learn their language, and I'll be honest, I just got into GIFs. Anybody know what they are? Yeah, I'm laughing. I'm serious. I don't know how I got into it. I think my brother sent me one time. I'm cracking up, and I said, "What is it? How did you do that?" He said, "Idiot, look at your phone. There's a little button. Hit on that." I'm like, "Oh my goodness, okay." All of a sudden, I'm gifting back and forth with my daughter for like an hour, and I'm just cracking up, and she's sending me stuff, and it's so funny you say that, because like we're doing that. This is like recently, within the last 3 weeks. And then in the middle of all of that, I actually sent a text. "Hey, how you doing?" And no GIF, but so you're absolutely right. Like, get into their world, speak their language, right?
That's good.
All right, another question or comment. That was really good.
So when you talk about building the bridge, I have a 13-year-old daughter that we tell her she's like a porcupine. So it's hard, you wanna get close to them, but then she doesn't want you to.
Yeah.
And I understand you gotta keep trying, but at what point do you, like, if
You-
she wants to be, if she doesn't want a hug,
Right.
do I just hug her?
Okay,
And
I got
get
you.
Will?
Yeah.
When my husband wants to give her a hug and sometimes he just forces it,
Yeah.
I mean, that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like, come on, I wanna love you, and stuff like that, but like, I mean, is that wrong? Cause we're trying to show love to our daughter.
Right. Right.
Who has to really like it down deep, but yet she just doesn't want it because she's 13.
Sure. Yeah. I ran into the same thing with my daughters, and it's interesting because at 13, when we were having that, I stopped hugging her because it would be the stiff man, and I said, okay, I don't want to make her feel whatever, right? She was at 13. When she was 17, now the bridge is built, and we went away to a daddy-daughter camp, and you got to open up with your daughters in camp, and I had 2 of my daughters with me, and I said, so what is it that dad can do different? And this same daughter, who I stopped hugging, looked up at me, and she said, "You stopped hugging me." I was like, no, wait a minute. Like, that's so unfair. And I was like, honey, you would always. She was like, I wanted a hug. So, right, that's a hard one. Do you stop hugging them? Because you kind of feel like you're going to get, but I don't know that the hugging is the issue, as why is it that there is that, right? As far as,
She turned 13. I mean, it was like
it just happened, right? Are you connecting with her in her world with the things that she is interested in,
We try, but
right?
you're met with constant, leave me alone, It's,
Yeah.
It's amazing how, I mean, I know I get it too, and we try it all the time.
We probably, we get into that team, but I think a lot of times when I was not connecting with my 13-year-old, I was trying to connect, but it was trying to connect with things that like I like hey, on my terms, right? And it was like, no, hey, come on, you want to go to Dairy Queen? Everybody else is out with mom. No, I'm good. But then when I start connecting with what she's involved in,
Yeah, her love language.
her love, I mean, I give you a prime example. She was into One Direction, big time, big time. So I said, okay. I text One Direction. I found out one of their songs, and I listened to it, and I learned it. Came home one day, hung up my keys. Midnight Man. She was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
It was so funny. I said, "What do you mean?" I said, I was listening to this. This song was great. Listen to the drum riff in this. I said that. She was like, "That's One Direction." I said, "I know. I mean, pretty cool, right?" She was like, "You're weird," and walked away. Okay, that's fine. But guess what? I kept talking about, and then I actually, I mean, it was hard to do.
Yeah.
I actually followed One Direction on Twitter. I did. And when I would come home and I was like, oh my goodness, did you hear Zane's thinking about leaving the group? She was like, Dad, what are you doing? I said, no, I mean, did you know that? And when I came home and I told her something that she didn't know, and she grabbed her phone and she was like, oh my goodness, I said, I know, right? And now we're sitting there talking. So I'm just saying, there may be different interests and likes that are not my interests and likes, but I had to kind of come down to her level, and it helped to build the bridge. It really did. So
Something to share too.
Yeah,
That was a
please.
good question. And maybe you all have known this. You know that like the book, The 5 Love Languages, on their website they have a team 5 love languages.
Mm.
So if you want to like do a cool quiz with them, it'll break it down. Because again, like the top 3 things, right? You identify to explore. Sometimes we want to like quick fix things. Give me something practical. Give me something quick. But we as people, even me, like when I'm down, even I'm a counselor and I can't figure things out. Like it'll take me a couple hours to relax. Okay, tension gone down, defenses gone down. Maybe your daughter likes, maybe not physical touch. We ruled that out. But maybe words of affirmation or gifts or, so identifying like what is that bridge? Like having a vision, and just even as people, like think about your life. I know about me, like whenever I'm down, like it's not like a quick like, hey, you're gonna hang in there. Like you're a giver, you're gonna receive. But no, like a couple hours and you gotta a couple days. So give it time, and that's what mental health is too. It's a process, and I think we all get, me and self included, we all get upset at expectations placed on the youth because we want them to excel. I had someone ask me, like, you know how like with school, like you could tell someone's improving by they get better grades. In mental health, how do you know someone's getting better? It's like, wow, that's a really good question. When they open up and they tell me like, hey, I had a good day, Dad, or hey, I met someone new today at lunch. Like those little comments are like blessings in disguises, but we like, me and self included, I don't see that as growth. But we have to really pay attention to those small steps because they're coming from, again, this pandemic. Not to be very reflective, but I really believe that's impacted us, is we have to start out again. Unlearn what you thought would work and learn the basics again, unfortunately. Like definitely use wisdom, but we have to unlearn things because it's a whole new culture, whole new lingo, whole new way of bridging. And so it's going to take even me, like, even, I'm 32 and I'm like, okay, I feel like, okay, I'm young and I'm, with high schoolers, but there's still things that I have to unlearn constantly. Give it to God. God, open up my eyes. Show me how to communicate. So.
yeah, it's good. I just today found out that my 11-year-old wants to be an author. And she's been writing this long book in study hall. I'm like, wow. Now, why didn't she didn't just start writing this book, she's been writing all summer. Why am I just finding out now? And here's one thing I'm realizing. You talk about untraining, right? I already told you about how my dad raised us. I'm learning to listen to my kids and not when they talk and tell me about that little insight on what they love, say, oh, wow, that's neat. Okay. Hey, where's mom? I don't even remember it. Which means that's the back door into their heart. And I remember her saying about, I'm driving and rushing around getting this one here, and she mentioned, I said, how was study hall today? Did you get your homework done? I was just, yeah, I did. I got my homework done. So I was just kind of working on the stuff I was writing. And for some reason, it was like, God's like, capitalize on that. My normal response would have been, oh, okay, that's nice. So listen, we're going to go to Chick-fil-A, get dinner. And I was like, what little stuff you're writing? And she lit up. She's like, I'm writing a book. I said, you're writing a book? What? And I'm thinking, how? Now she's 11. How much stuff have I missed that my kids gave me a little insight into what they like? And I was like, oh, that's nice. No, that's your back door. Now go in and capitalize off of that, like I did with One Direction with my daughter. And ended up at a concert at MetLife. Man, you would have been proud. I'm standing around with all these 13-year-old girls, and I'm looking at all the fathers, and they're all like, I'm like, much love, right? You want to go get a pretzel? But I'm up there screaming, like when it came out, and I'm like, ah! And she's screaming, and we're holding on to each other. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, right? So I'm just saying, finding their interest, and you got to get into their interest. And the problem is most of their interests are not going to probably be yours, because they're a kid and you're an adult. But that's the back door into their heart.
So you had mentioned chapel and how you can, incorporate little snippets of
Yeah.
the social emotional in chapel. Are there any other courses or classes or places that the kids are learning some more about social emotional health in school and the curriculum?
That's a great, I'm trying to think.
Critical thinking or confronting today's issues.
I was thinking about
right?
critical thinking, there's a critical thinking class.
Confronting today's issues, I think, is a Bible class.
Yeah.
Maybe in etiquette, like do they go over this in girls etiquette or like in some of the Bible classes or it's something that it
Yeah.
would be
Yeah, the girls' etiquette and things, they kind of hit on this too.
girls health.
Girls' health.
Girls' health, right. But that's something we can look at.
Boys'
Oh,
But we still need social emotional.
the boys.
Isn't
Yeah,
it
the
most
boys
of
we've
them?
given up on. We have military applications out there. No, but that would be something to look at and do something just really concentrated on, like I don't know what you would call it, like a mental health for teens, and just all the aspects that feed into that. That could be a course in and of itself. So that's a good idea.
Or just like within PD for the teachers, like it's just like, hey, wherever you can incorporate some of these.
Absolutely, yes. Because I think they need to keep hearing it, just because of where they are cognitively, right?
Like if a child's got like a biological depression, like all its needs are being met, situational, everything is good in their life, but just they were just wired differently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah, I'll let Joseph touch on that, because I think that this is where, when you were talking about meds, right? Like what place does it have? I'll give this spiritual or theological answer to what you just said, and then I'll throw it to Joseph. From a Christian worldview, we believe that we live in a sin-cursed world. We believe that ultimately sickness and death are a result of sin. Okay? Why do people get cancer, diabetes, and all these diseases? We live in a sin-cursed world. That's the Christian worldview, what we believe. Okay. So then why is it, when it comes to the brain, which is a physical organ, can't that be affected? Just like cholesterol and everything else. It can. It can. The brain is not exempt from not having the effects of the curse. It's a physical organ. And to me, that has always been the kingpin argument when, some good meaning Christians are like, it's just prayer. So every other physical disease you're okay with if I take high blood pressure medicine, but when I take something for the organ of the brain that's affected, no, you should need to pray more. So I think that's the theological answer I give to that. But now I'll let you address her question about everything else is good, that she's interacting and she's doing everything, but there's still just it's a biological.
I can speak from a place where I personally, have faced depression, and I sought help, therapy. And so my mother had depression, her mother had it. So there is real biological genetic things, and like Pastor Ron said, there's mental health and there's also brain health. And chemically, my personality type, I'm again a counselor, but I'm also such a giver and I have a big heart, so daily I have to do things that will help me, whether it's talk to my wife or exercise, or when I see a counselor myself, having a place that I can go to. So to answer your question, it goes back to the serenity prayer of God, thank you for creating me the way I am. Again, I don't know why you call me to be a counselor when I myself can't pull it together, but that's our testimony, right? And you'll ask people in addiction, like, oh, how are you addictions counselor? Because I was addicted, And so sometimes God will use that to help people. But I do know another topic in the church that we find a lot is, unfortunately, when people in the church fall through mental health, right? And there is troubles, right? Whether it's church staff or lay people that do fall to suicide. And I think it's such a balance with we have to tap into that spiritual component, but also I tell my wife and I tell people too, and I'm really glad that I'm an academic advisor here, because I was burned out doing counseling in a secular setting because I couldn't use Christ, But if it gets to the point where it's really bad, I just have to let counseling go. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to focus on guidance counseling and stuff like that. But I think whenever we get attached to something, whether it's like a profession or like, oh, I have to stick with it, I have to continue, God called me to finish the race. I don't know though, but because, right, it could mean I'm not spending enough time with my cats. No, I'm just kidding. Spending enough time with my family, or I'm not giving it diligence at work. So I think it's, God, accept me for how I am. I want to make changes. But just knowing that until we see Jesus again, that it's going to be our Achilles heel. It's going to be a thorn in the flesh, just like how Paul wrestled with that, right? So, God, take this away. Okay, I don't know that he wants to do that because it'll make people not rely on God. I think that's a whole other topic. Yeah. But basically, I think that's good, and I think it's just coming from accepting who we are, accepting our youth for who they are, but there is still change. And not putting our hope in the result of, okay, now they're finally better, not depressed. But no, like, okay, for a couple months they were doing well. They may have, backslid a little bit from mental health, but they're continual like us. We're always in process. And if we look at mental health with the process in mind and not like, okay, it's done, like a shift or like grocery run, it's done. Because what Jesus said, right? Nothing is ever finished. Mental health will be a continual thing that we struggle with here on the earth. But there is hope, and there's peace, and there's strength, and there's scripture, and there's fellowship. I love what it said here. Social life, spin that with your youth. They're like, oh yeah, I don't have my social life. Oh, how's your fellowship? Are you fellowshipping at youth group? Use those world-made concepts, but throw like biblical concepts. Oh, how's fellowship? Good. Self-care time. Actually, do you feel restored right now? Self-care, self-relaxation, but then there's restoration. Self-care tends to be temporary. Okay, I'll go for a drive, a weekend getaway, that's cool, but restoring yourself, that is what is going to help long-term. So.
Yeah, and if you email me, because I forget the name, she was a broadcaster for Christian Broadcasting Network for years, struggled with depression all her life, wrote a book about it, because it wasn't like I didn't have a family, I had all that. And that was a powerful book for her to write, because when you see her on Christian Broadcasting Network, she was one of the main anchors, I forget her name, Sharon somebody, but she's bubbly, she's happy, she's doing interviews all over the place, but she tells you how hard it was to get up and go to work. And she had to get medication to help. There was just something that was just not wired right. So if you email me, I'll send you the link on YouTube and you can watch that. And if you want to get her book, you get her book.
Can I make a comment? It's
Yeah,
not
please.
really directly related to the class, but something you said just really had an impact on me earlier. It was just a passing comment. You said something about coming to faith 10 years ago. So I see a ton of new faces out here. I've been around faith for quite a while with my kids and doing different things with the school. I'm on the board, and I've been on the board for a while. I can remember back when there was an opportunity to bring you on staff. Because you said 10 years. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess he hasn't been around forever. And I'm thinking back to those 10 years ago and how excited we all were on the board. Like, wow, we could bring Pastor Ron on staff. Are you
It's not
kidding?
all that. It's not all that. Trust me.
Wow, God's blessed us with the resources to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then I think here we are now with this facility, with Joseph, with his credentials,
man,
who I
yeah.
didn't even meet until tonight. Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Like for me and a few others, I won't call out names, a few others that have been around for a long time, you kind of almost forget where we came from.
Mhm.
And of course, all the new faces have no idea where we came from, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
wow, it's just amazing what's going on here. Thank you for everything you're doing. And Joseph, again,
Thank
welcome
you, yeah.
aboard. It's just phenomenal to sit here
Yeah.
and take it all in.
No, it is. I mean, God has blessed us, man. He has blessed us. And yeah, I won't go into that whole story, but yeah, my passion as I was working with people, Ryan walked in the office, for you newbies, you don't know. He walked in the office. I was on staff at a church full time and at Faith, and he said, hey, the board just approved that we could hire a campus pastor. Do you know anybody? And God was already working in my heart. I said, I'm dealing with 30 and 40-year-olds whose thinking has to be unlearned. What if I caught them at 14, 15, and 16? And I didn't know what that meant. I actually thought Malik and I were going to go back to Philly and work with Teen Haven. And then Ryan walks in and says, if you know anybody, and I was like, yeah, I think I do. So it's been awesome to see what God does. And Joseph, and again, not to try to embarrass him, but this has been a long prayer for us, wanting someone who is a bona fide Christian, but they have the bona fide training too in the mental health world. And that's hard to find. Someone who will hold to their convictions, but they also have that mental health training. And so when we found him, it was like, yes, right? So God is blessing us, and we just want to impact the kids. And and this is an endeavor to try to impact you and equip you guys as you're trying to do your best in raising them. So, yeah. But thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to just close out in prayer. But God, thank you. Again, our children are a gift from you. We thank you for them. And God, it is a challenge to raise them in the world that we're living in now, with all the things that we wrestle with as adults, our own demons that we're trying to get straight. God, we need your grace. And I pray that tonight would have been just a step in the right direction in helping us all to go home now and do something different, to build a bridge into our kids' lives. So, Father, we pray for all the kids that are represented here tonight by these families. I pray for your grace in their lives. Give us the wisdom, Father, to love them well, and to help them to navigate through these times. We thank you in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Joseph. Let's give a hand for Joseph. Appreciate his expertise in this area.